Your author mentions experimental rigor to demonstrate a mental process. Let me read this paragraph that she wrote. This kind of problem is one all scientists face: how to study a naturally occurring phenomenon with sufficient experimental rigor to draw conclusions. The answer is to try to isolate the phenomenon and bring it, or some version of it, into the lab. And with this approach, the challenge is to decide what's essential and what's inessential about the phenomenon under study. So, for instance, here's the Stroop effect. You may have seen it before. I'm going to read the color of the font horizontally: blue, orange, green, red, purple, blue, green, red, purple, orange, purple, orange, red, blue, green, and then red, blue, green, orange, purple. As you can see on the top and bottom rows, the color of the font and the word match. In the middle two rows, they don't match, and it was much harder to perform that task in the middle two rows. That's a suggestion that we have a tendency in our minds as English readers to pronounce things that we come across. When I see R-E-D or O-R-A-N-G-E, I must say it. I'm just so programmed to do that. And when I'm programmed to do that, I have to fight past that urge to name the color of the font when they don't match. So that's an experiment that dates to 1935, about one of the oldest experiments in all of cognitive psychology, named after J.R. Stroop, who, fascinatingly, this was his only major publication. Kind of an interesting trivia. And there's a lot of that this semester. I'll be wasting your time with garbage like that, but I just can't help but mention it. You know, what Galati describes below is an experiment that favors internal validity, where confounds are controlled and basic questions are answered. So the D. Schrodinger-McDermott effect, and let me tell you about the D. Schrodinger-McDermott effect, does not generalize to everyday experience, but answers a key question on memory. And here's what I'm talking about. If I present people with the words pillow, blanket, dream, alarm clock, snore, nighttime, etc., all of those words surround the idea of sleep. Even if sleep is omitted, people will often falsely remember that they were shown sleep. And that is a very basic memory paradigm that dates to the mid-90s. And it is something that answers a basic question about memory, is that we falsely recall things that are part of the theme, but not actually listed. And that's the D. Schrodinger-McDermott effect, dating to almost 30 years ago now. But that is an experiment that doesn't favor the real world. We're not confronted with those things too often. But nonetheless, it's an important part of research to answer basic questions. You know, with respect, and here's the paragraph. The key challenge for scientists, however, is to make sure the lab tasks they develop preserve the workings of the processes under study. The most rigorously controlled experiment is at best limited value if the phenomenon being studied does not occur or occurs in different ways outside the lab. Well, maybe. I mean, but on the same time, it's worth it to answer basic questions when we're controlling for confounding variables and getting to answered questions. So, for instance, there's this Hadron Collider where they collide molecular parts of matter to see how they'll act under pressure when they collide against each other, etc. Or other sorts of research about the roots of sequoia trees out west. That's internally valid research in which confounds are controlled and questions are answered, even though it doesn't necessarily apply to everyday living. So I felt like I wanted to address that particular paragraph, and then we'll get on to influences here in a second.